Was good, y'all? Track Kennedy with StudioSounds.com back with a brand new tutorial. In this video, I'll be breaking down one of the beats I made inspired by Post Malone's new album, Beer Bongs and Bentleys. That album has a lot of dark melodic tracks with a bit of trap beat influence, so I wanted to create a beat that fits that vibe. I also ended up doing more happy, commercial-friendly type beats for the album as well. I'll break those down in an upcoming tutorial for you guys, just so you guys can see the variation on the album. For anyone curious as to what I use in this beat, I created the beat using Silent and presets from Muddy Cups 2. All drums came from the Legends Never Die drum kit, and the vocal chop is from our Phone Home sample pack. You can find all of those at StudioSounds.com for anyone interested in picking those up. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe for more tutorials. Without further talking though, let's go ahead and jump into this video and show you guys what went into this. So for this particular beat, if you actually take a look at it, it goes from the intro straight to the hook, and a lot of people will ask, well, should I start off with my hook or start off with my verse? In my opinion, I kind of usually like to start off with the hook if it's something kind of catchy and it's the main focal point of the beat, which usually it is. And the reason I like to bring it in early is because if you send beats to an A&R, a DJ, a producer, whoever you're sending beats to, an artist, just somebody that's going through a lot of beats, if you've ever watched somebody go through a ton of beats, they're not listening to the whole beat. They're not listening to usually not even a minute of the beat. If something isn't catching them right in the beginning, they're going to go ahead and skip to the next beat. So I like to put the hook there if I feel like it's the focal point of the beat, just because if you put it later in the track and they're going through a lot of stuff, they might not even hear kind of the craziest part of the beat. So that's just something kind of keep in mind depending on the track. But anyway, so the very first thing that I started off with is just this little keyboard sound. It's just a chill synth piano, and I just have a slight delay on it to give it some movement, and an EQ just to cut out the frequencies I don't need, just so it doesn't clash. And by itself, here's what it sounds like. I thought that was just a nice sounding chord progression, and I also threw a strum on it, so if you look at it, they're all kind of slightly off the grid. And if you want to do that to your track, you just want to come in here to your strum and you want to play with this setting in here to kind of find what you like. Make sure your preserve end is in here just so you don't mess up your timing. And then you can also do alternate directions and all other kinds of little choices in here, just kind of make it into something that you like. But this is basically what the track started off with. The next thing I added to this was just this little triangle glider. So once I had that, the next thing I added to this was just this little triangle glider on pattern 2. And this is from Muddy Cups 2 as well, from StudioSounds.com. It's just a triangle glider, and I just turned up the portamento a little bit just so it kind of slides into the sound to make it a little bit more dramatic. Then I threw a heavy EQ on here, a heavy reverb, a delay, and then just a second EQ to kind of get rid of some of the frequencies the first one didn't pick up. And I just wanted to create a sound that was a little bit more ambient, played the background a little bit, wasn't so bright, so that's all the EQs and the effects. But when you add these two together, this is what you have. So just really simple 4 notes basically, but just adds a nice little ambient feel to those chords. So I'll jump to the next section, continue. So the next thing I actually have in here is just a bass line, but before we cover that, I want to get through the instruments. So the next instrument that I added in here was just this pad called the Melancholy Mood from Muddy Cups 2. Patch 112, and basically with this, all I did was just accent the chord progression. I didn't play all the chords, just a couple of them, just kind of accent it and help thicken it up. So here's what it sounds like. And then again, just threw a little EQ on here to make sure it's not that bright, to bring us that kind of ambient Post Malone type feel. And then also cut the bottom end of the frequencies I don't need. So from here, I actually added a vocal chop. So I'll jump to the next section. I'll show you guys that. So one thing that I noticed on the album is that they have a lot of different little vocal samples, vocal chops throughout the different beats. So I wanted to add that to this as well. So I used our Phone Home vocal sample pack for this, and I just picked up this little piece in there. Sounds like that. It has EQ, has some delay on it, and also has this Pancake VST, which is 100% completely free VST that you can download. Just an automatic panner, which is just great to bring an interesting sound to different pieces of the track. So I added that to it, and then I also pitched it. So I went ahead and I right-clicked Edit and found out what the actual pitch of the sound was, which is just F sharp. Then I went into the miscellaneous functions and then just right-clicked over F sharp to make sure it's mapped to the keys correctly. So now when I play this melody, this is what you have. And those vocal chops just help to really humanize the track and bring a catchy little piece to it. So let's jump in the next section, continue. So once I had that, the next thing I did was I went to pattern 1 and I went to the patterns quick render as audio clip and just had pattern 1 exported. Here's what it sounds like. So what I did was reverse it. Went ahead and pitched it all the way up, made sure that it's set to generic, and I time stretched it to 1 bar, I believe, just to make it really fast and short. And then what I did was I just kind of chopped it up by ear and found different little sections that I liked how they layered over the chords. If you look at it, for the most part, it's the exact same chord, just reversed. And then I used those little pieces just to provide an extra little layer in here, and threw a little delay on it just to make sure it kind of lingers out to make it a little bit more interesting. But when you combine this pattern with everything else that we have, this is what you have. So add just a nice little ambience to it. That little reverse is just a cool little piece in there. So the next thing that I added to this was I started working on the drums from here. Pretty much I felt like the track was sounding pretty good. So the drums are actually really simple. I'm just going to go ahead and run through these patterns real quick. If there's anything I need to explain, I'll go ahead and do that. But for the most part, if you guys kind of take a look at it, they're pretty simple enough that you would just kind of take a look at the grid and see exactly what I'm doing. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Right there, you just have a very simple little percussion sound just to add a little bit of variety to the track. And for the most part, that's going to be most of the drums. There's a little open hat that we're going to add in here as well, really simple. All right, and then we want to go in here and drop this bass line in here real quick as well. And the bass actually comes from OVO, the Dynasty Volume 2, just called the square bass one. Just has a nice little aggressive sound, so I like to go in here and use this bass a lot. But if you look at it, it's just complementing the chords again. So when you add the bass line in here, this is what you have. So that's going to cover pretty much most of the hook. Let's jump to the next section. I'll start breaking down the little different drops and stuff that happened during the verse. So if you take a look at the actual verse, nothing really crazy changes up to it. What I did was I added a second snare. I took out the little vocal section, which just plays during the hook. And that's basically kind of most of the changes. So this little second snare that plays in here, this is all from the Legends Never Die drum kit, by the way. But the second snare just kind of helps accent it and bring some bounce to the track. And then if you look at it, it plays throughout the track. So it's not going to play during the first hook, but once it comes in during the verses, it's just going to stay in the track. So when you add that to the track, that's what you have. Then for here, I made this entire verse pretty short. If you kind of listen to his album, it has a bunch of different ways to arrange stuff. Some stuff is arranged a little bit quicker. Some stuff is a little bit dragged out. So it just kind of depends on this beat. For this particular beat, I thought it would just sound good to be kind of a shorter track. Shorter verses, a nice catchy hook. But basically to build up to the hook, I wanted to add a little transition in here. So what I did was basically for this little section, I brought back in the little triangle lead. So it's almost kind of like a pre-hook section, if you will. This little lead comes in over here as well before the hook. So when the lead comes in, I drop out some of the drums just to give it some space, and then we pick up all the drums and everything back into the hook to bring it energy. So here's what it sounds like. So that sounds pretty good, but if you take a look at it, it's still kind of missing a transition effect. So that's what pattern 13 is. On pattern 13, I have just an effects riser 3, and this is from Muddy Cups 2 as well, I believe, and it is. And then I just have a reversed crash. You guys have seen me do this a ton of times. You can use any crash to do this. You just want to normalize it, reverse it, make sure it's set to generic, and then just pick your timing. For me, it just happens to be 2 beats, but this just helps build suspense to wrap it back around to the hook. So by itself, this is what it sounds like. But with the track, it just adds a nice dimension to it. And then from there, it just goes back into the hook, repeats, and then it drops into like a little outro section. And it pretty much ends right there. So I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. I hope you guys learned something new. Again, if you want to pick up any of this stuff, you can do so right now at studiosounds.com. All the kits and banks that I used are available there. And again, as always, I genuinely appreciate you guys watching. I hope this helped some of you guys out. I hope you learned something new. Until next time, Track Kennedy with studiosounds.com.